Welcome to Inside the 18. I'm Michael Magid. With me is Omar Zini, and we have some guy who just grabbed a microphone and decided he was going to come in here and talk some goalkeeping with us. MLS legend Jon Busch. Bushy, thanks for being on Inside the 18. First off, honestly, this whole setup is just for you. This
is great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Mike and Omar. And I do like your Christmas lights, so very festive in the middle of the summer.
Look, we do what we can. We wanted to light you nice and properly, and we were looking at everybody, on the crew, and they were saying, you know what? Lighting's not strong enough. We need to do something, but we want to keep it festive at the same time. They said, everybody at the Holiday Inn here was like, you know what? We've got some Christmas lights. I think it's going to add the ambiance for you guys, and it's going to light you in a nice, positive way. Kind of like Jesus was lit by the Christmas lights.
Here we go. Already. I need all the help I can get, so we'll take it.
Guys, first off, thanks a lot for everybody who's been out there rating, subscribing, reviewing. It's been absolutely fantastic. For those of you who are not subscribing and keep DMing us, asking us when the next episode comes out, I don't think you understand how a subscription works. The way it works is if you subscribe, it automatically comes onto your phone, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher. Is that a thing?
We're Stitcher, Google
Spotify,
Play, everything. Yeah.
Everything, yeah. So that's all you got to do, guys. Just subscribe, and it's going to come out. Also, thanks for everybody who's been reviewing. It's been absolutely fantastic for us. Really appreciate all those reviews. Guys, remember, contact at Inside the 18 Media is the best way to get a hold of us. And before we get going, I kind of want to read a listener review because they make me feel good about myself, and I feel I'm very insecure. Unlike John, I haven't accomplished a lot in my life, so this is all I can live for, is these reviews right here. And this one comes from a very well-known listener. This comes from 123456789. That is the person who sent in this review. So pretty sure this is just Russian spam bot, pretty sure, that listens to Goalkeeping podcast. And it says, best information out there. And then it says, this podcast by far provides you with the best information for everything goalkeeping. The insights into professional and coaches into professionals, and I can't read, into professionals and coaches on how to become better are second to none. Thanks, guys. Keep up the great work! ! Bushy, thanks for reading that review, dude.
I was going to say, you better take your mom out for dinner when you get home.
That's why it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It was like my mom's like, Michael, I don't know. I'll put 1, 2, 3, 4. That is my name. No, honestly, thanks, anonymous person, for writing that review. And keep sending those reviews, guys. Once we get to 100 reviews, we can give away that gift card. I think we're like at 85 right now, so we're really moving up the charts. Literally, that's how we move up the charts, is by when you write a review, we move up the iTunes charts. So, watch out, Joe Rogan. Inside the 18 is coming for you. Only, 38 million more downloads to go. So, all right, guys, let's get into some of these listener questions. Usually we like to do listener questions where, people reach out and they say, hey, Omar, Michael, I've got this going on. I got that going on. But honestly, we were like, we got Jon Busch on. We're not going to be answering these questions. Maybe we'll help out a little bit, but you guys don't really want to hear from us.
I'm going to turn off my mic. I think that's until it's a hard time to speak. I'm going to turn off my mic, but
it's a hard time to speak because you've been running distribution sessions and handling sessions and all that stuff. Here at Camp Shutout, simple plug for Camp Shutout, shameless plug for Camp Shutout, we've been actually coaching as well, too. By the way, I don't know if Omar and I knew we were going to be coaching when we came here, too. I think we just thought we were doing podcasts and, little demo stuff. And then they're like, great, you're in Group 7. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should put a session together. Maybe that's what I need to do. All right, let's get into these listener questions. If there's anybody listening to this podcast who doesn't know who Jon Busch is, honestly, you've accidentally stumbled upon this podcast. You guys are diehard goalkeeper nerds, so I know you guys know Bushy. Again, obviously accomplished professional in the MLS game, caps with the U.S. men's national team, collegiate you were a collegiate All-American?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but yes,
okay.
I think I was.
Yeah. So obviously a very, very accomplished person. So let's get into these questions here. Number one comes from Lucas Krasanski from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. You have international fans, Bushy.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. I think that's the guy who threw the beer at me when we played in Vancouver, actually.
And he wants to know, Bushy, were you able to get those stains out? No, that's not what he asked. He said, I would like to hear more about how to develop myself as a top keeper. If you could go back to your younger goalkeeper self, what advice would you give yourself? Oh, check this out. He's only 10 years old and has big dreams.
Wow.
So I don't want to look back and wish I had done anything differently. Man, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself at 10 years old, man. Yeah, but honestly, let's help this kid out right here. What advice would you give a younger goalkeeper, and is there anything that you would do differently?
First and foremost, Lucas, thank you for the question, especially from a 10-year-old. That's fantastic. First and foremost, though, you got to enjoy it, Lucas. You're a kid. You have to enjoy it. Just playing soccer. You can play in the field. You can play in goal. You don't have to get specifically into goalkeeping solely at the age of 10. You also need to work on your foot skills. But first and foremost, it's a game. We need to have fun. You need to enjoy it. As far as the goalkeeping specific stuff, just get around as many coaches as you can and learn the basics. Learn how to catch, properly, whether it's an underhand, an overhand, collapse dive, and all that. It's the foundation of goalkeeping. I call it the meat and potatoes of goalkeeping. The stronger you can make your foundation, the better of a goalkeeper you're going to be.
How strong was Omar's foundation this morning at the college session?
Omar was quite good this morning. He was very good. I was very impressed with Omar.
Nice.
A little out of shape, but like I told you, I call you John, but I'm going to call you Bushy every once in a while.
Whatever you want to call me.
Like I told him this morning is that, when you become
a coach.
call him
HPG, High Performance Goalkeeping.
Whatever you want.
No shameless plugs here.
Once I went from a goalkeeper to a coach, you start, kind of forgetting the day-to-day process as a player. You forget, what you necessarily need to work on and the little things the nuances about your game that you need to really, like you said, the collapse dive, the front dive, all the technical stuff, because at the next level, everybody's very similar in that sense. And then I got back out there today, and it just reminded me that, one, I'm out of shape, but two, there's a lot of little things, whether it's just as quickly as you can get into your set position, having your hands ready to, attack low and high balls, not jumping up when I'm about to get a shot from close range, little things like that. And I thought you did a great job of stopping the session and letting everybody know point by point what you saw. And it was great. No, I'm happy that I went out there. I'm going to be out there tomorrow morning as well, so I'm excited about that.
Nice. There you go.
Nice. By the way, for the audience out there who's listening, this wasn't going out there at 8 in the morning. This was out going 5:45. Is that what you guys did?
We started at 5:45. So here at camp, I take the college kids out that are actually the staff members. So we've got to get it done first thing in the morning. So we start at 5:45 and they're done by 7:15, so they can get back in for breakfast and then turn around and get the campers back out by 8 o'clock to start camp.
My favorite thing about this whole thing is that we've been staring at my laptop like that's Lucas. Like we're actually giving the answer to Lucas right here. So, Lucas, this is you on our laptop right here. We're inspired by you. I actually hope to see you one day become a big-time pro based on the advice that Bushy gave you right there. We're going to skip the second question because I don't know how pertinent that is to everybody else listening out there. We might get to it in a second, but let's move on to something a little bit more serious. This is for Bushy, and it's U.S. Soccer and other clubs have prototypes, and I love how it's in quotes right there, on height, etc. for players. What are your views on this, and are we missing great players because we use these as benchmarks? And that's from Mike Birkland.
That's a great question.
Great question.
Yeah, I was waiting to see how long it took us to get into the height requirements.
Yeah, I know, 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Unbelievable.
Well, look, I mean, I as somebody who's, let's just say, not the tallest goalkeeper in the world, somebody like myself growing up, I looked up to somebody like yourself because I said, oh, you know what, I can relate to this person because I can see myself being that person.
Yeah.
I see David De Gea. I can't relate to being
tough.
David De Gea. So I watched everything you did. I watched everything Nicky Raimondo did, and I said, if it works for them, it can work for me type of a thing. And I think there's a lot of kids out there who can benefit from seeing role models such as yourself who don't listen to all of that, and they showcase, that, hey, if you're good enough, you're tall enough.
Yeah. No, and that's honestly, that's what I've always believed as a player and now as a coach. At the end of the day, certain coaches believe, they got to be bigger, they got to be, 6 foot or above. At the end of the day, if they can play, they can play. And that's when I coach, that's what I look for, whether it's, at college level, at the DA level, at non-DA level, even with the youth national teams now, starting to work with them. It's, first and foremost, is the goalkeeper good enough? Or do we see the upside that this goalkeeper, regardless of his size or her size, is there potential that we can develop? So as far as the federation, when I do my work with the federation on the youth side, I don't worry about the sizes because eventually that'll all take care of itself. And I'm looking to see who the best goalkeeper is or who has the most potential.
Yeah, one of the first questions I always get asked by any coach who's looking to scout a player is, how tall are they? which is really disturbing, and it's upsetting to me because I'm 5 foot something underneath 10, and we'll figure it out one day. But because they don't ask, well, how are their hands? How's their footwork? Can they distribute a ball? How are they on crosses? Because in all honesty, I've seen guys who are 6'4" who can't handle crosses, and I've seen guys who are 5'8" who can handle crosses.
Absolutely.
We got one right here. So a lot of it is just a lot of those intangibles that don't just come from just by looking at the physical structure. And also, there's honestly a lot of things that you can do better than sometimes a bigger keeper in regards to what attributes you bring to the table,
Yep,
so,
absolutely.
This is one that gets me a little right in the chest.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've heard it since I was 15 years old, and now being, a retired player and being a coach, it is what it is, But I get those same phone calls or same emails from coaches, and it always very quickly starts with what's, his or her size. And for me, I just laugh at it. I even most of the time say to the coach, are you really asking me that question? But it is what it is. I mean, that's where these coaches think they have to start when the conversation of goalkeeping comes up.
Yeah. Omar, anything you want to add to that? Since you're a taller guy right here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, for me, I never saw size as to me, I was 6 foot. So I never.
You were like 6 foot at 10, right?
So. I was very tall, very young, and I thought I was going to grow some more, but didn't go any further. But no, I feel like even when I got to college, like I had 2 guys on my team. One was 6'4", one was 6'6". So you could tell like the prototype of the coaching staff of what they were looking for. And I think the team was built very well around me. The coach was like, hey, we're going to get a lot of tall guys, and they're going to do a lot of your work. So don't come out for crosses. Let them do the work and just kind of be in there, use your shot stopping. So I think it depends on, the coaching staff, and we talk about it all the time, who's willing to give you the opportunity. So unfortunately, it is a stigma that if you are a certain height that you don't meet the requirement, and some people give up because of that, and they kind of foresee the future and say, you know what, it might not be worth my time. But remember, there's going to be a coach out there that will give you their chance, and there's a reason why we have Nick Romano, Bushy, who have, not just because the coach gave you your chance, but because you actually had these intangible qualities that a lot of other goalkeepers who are super tall, they don't have those because they never had to work on it. So exactly. I think that's the added benefit that you have, where you kind of start behind the 8 ball in a sense, but as you grow up, you start fine-tuning your game, and if you grow, you have all these things that you've added. But even if you don't, you still have these capabilities that a lot of other people don't have, and all you need is one coach to be like, you know what, I don't care about height. If you're good, you're good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No. And here's a question from Zach. Moving on right here, and I think this is actually a really good question because we did distribution today, which obviously comes into communication. And one of the things that I find a lot of goalkeepers have issues with is communicating, because they think that shouting is communicating. So this person here asks, are there any tips for goalkeepers on what to say on the field to help them control their back line? Bushy, obviously, you were, I don't want to say an animated goalkeeper when you played, but let's just say I heard an interview with you once where you said, I chew gum because I talk so much.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact.
That I had to chew gum. Yeah. By the way, when I was a kid, I would watch you and I would say, oh, I just have to keep talking the whole time. Not realizing that there's a difference between actually being specific, clear, and concise, and just rambling where they just start tuning you out. So what advice would you give to young keepers in regards to, so the back line is actually listening to them as opposed to just tuning them out?
Well, this is, I never had a problem ever talking. It was just something that was naturally in me, probably talk too much. But as I got older, I also realized about the specific communication, not just, it's not a play-by-play, like you're calling a game for TV. You have to be very specific. You have to put a name to it, and you keep the sentences short so the defenders don't really have time to think about it. They just, hey, Frank, go right, whatever it is, and it's done. Because there's not time for conversations per se. Yeah. The other part of that, too, that I learned as I got older is changing your level. Sometimes you can bite into them when the ball's in a dangerous position, and other times when it's up the field a little bit and there's less pressure, it can be at a lower decibel. So you have to learn how to do that and when to when to raise it and when to drop it down. The other part, especially in today's game, is also knowing the players that are in front of you. When I first came in, it was whether people were yelling at me or vice versa. It was you said what you said and you either dealt with it or you weren't playing. In today's world, I think it's, I don't know if it's the right word to use is sensitive, but, you have different style of players. You know, some you can bite into, and some you got to put your arm around. So you also have to figure out, you know, the players in front of you, because at the end of the day, you need them playing for you. No matter how good of a goalkeeper you are, you need them to be blocking shots, pushing the line up, doing the dirty work for you to make your job easier.
One thing I want to add to that,
Absolutely.
I think we talked about the added benefits of coaching while you're still playing, and I think that's one of the biggest things. I mean, I'm learning now at Cal State LA, our coach is a very good man manager, and whenever there's a guy who's, you know, not doing well in school, or he misses his girlfriend and he has to travel, there's little things that these players have to do. He's very, like you said, there's players who have to have a little bit of added sensitivity. So he puts their arm around certain players, and there's other players where he can yell at them and get into them, and they respond well to that. So if you're a young goalkeeper out there, when in terms of communication and man management, if you can get into coaching or just do like a JV, varsity, whatever it is, get a coaching role as a goalkeeper coach or as a field player coach, you can learn from that, and you can start saying, oh, you know what, my goalkeeper's a little sensitive today, I should probably watch what I'm saying. Or in a game day, you know, he needs a little bit of extra motivation and warm up with this, and this, or I need to say a little extra. So then from there, you can take that with your team and be like, oh, okay, I can do this, and I can instill it in this. I don't know, I think that's, for me at least, what I've noticed. Back to the earlier question of what would I tell my younger self? Well, they asked Bushy, not me. But what I would tell my younger self is really just find ways to become more mature with that aspect. And it's for me, too, I was very negative when I had communication. So I used to just, like you said, you just kind of like a commentator's voice.
Yeah.
And eventually I had a friend of mine, well, we're still friends, but he looked at me, he's like, dude, shut up.
You know, when I first came into the MLS, I was the young guy, and I had senior, very experienced internationals in front of me. And, you know, sometimes I was scared to death of them a little bit, you know. And so it was always, you know, kind of a thing in the back of my head. It was like, make sure, you know, I got my game sorted out first before I really start biting into some of these guys, because it's very easy for them to turn around and just say, okay, why don't you take care of your business and we'll take care of ours. So, you know, that's something I would say keep in mind in it as well.
Bushy, is that something that happens at the pro game a lot, where a young guy will come out there and he's, let's just say, I don't say overconfident, but just, you know, he's trying to, he's a little, the insecurity's kind of showing, so he's kind of almost trying to like overcompensate for that. And the senior guys go, hey, you know what? We can probably find another guy that can do this, to the coach, and, you know, let's get another guy in here.
You see both sides.
Okay.
You know, as I came through, I saw many guys. Like, for me personally, you know, I'm very quiet off the field, you know, and I'm loud on the field because I know that that's part of my responsibility. But when, you know, especially when I got into the MLS, and you know, again, there were senior players that were far more experienced than I was, you know, I made it a point to win them over by the way I played, you know, not necessarily by what I said, you know, or tried to impress them with my communication. I communicated to get the job done, you know, but I tried to impress them or win them over with my performances in goal. You know, I've seen some guys, young guys, come in and it's the opposite way. You know, they talk way too much. You know, they're trying to prove themselves by their communication, and it actually does go the opposite way. You know, I remember one, you know, during my MLS career specifically, that, you know, he just, the day he walked in, it was all about why the team brought him there, and it was all about him, and da-da-da, and he never just was quiet enough to let his work speak for itself. And the senior players, you know, very quickly were like, get this guy out of here. We're tired of dealing with him. Wow. So it was, yeah, it can happen, that's for sure.
Yeah. I feel like I've been that guy before, and no one ever told me that that's the reason why I was released. I'm just like, I don't know. I thought everything was going great. Like, I was organizing all the time, and all these guys were listening to what I was saying, and like, in this whole time, they're like, yeah, that weird dude.
Yeah, that one back there, get rid of him.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's talk a little bit about conditioning, strength and conditioning.
Okay.
Obviously, this is something that's very important in the game. Mm-hmm. We just recently did an episode about this, about fitness for goalkeepers, and also sports performance specific for goalkeepers. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about this, you know, and you see this with college players all the time. They get a template from a coach, says, hey, this is your off-season program. Go and do it. It's not built for the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
It's built for the majority for the field players. Yep. So you need to adjust that to make it right for you. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your off-season strength and conditioning. What did it consist of?
Well, first and foremost, I love being in the gym in the off season. I was a gym rat, you know, and I think part of it was also because I was a smaller guy, you know, so I needed to be explosive. I needed to put on weight to be able to go for crosses with bigger guys when they were going to hit me, and be able to take that punishment.
Did your weight fluctuate based on where you were playing and what they wanted from you?
Not too much.
Okay.
I mean, I usually always played around 163, 165. But like for instance, when I went to UNC Charlotte my first year, I think I was lucky if I weighed $145. And I used to come out for crosses and just get smashed and go about 10 yards backwards. So after that freshman year, the focus was putting on some meat, and getting a little bit bigger, but not slowing down. Obviously one of my attributes is my quickness and my explosiveness. So it was a balancing act of, putting on weight and getting a little bit stronger, but also keeping my explosiveness. So, working with the strength and conditioning coaches to specifically figure out what works for me. And, again, I was very fortunate. I had guys around me at UNC Charlotte that knew how to do it properly. Because back then there wasn't a lot of strength and conditioning going on. There wasn't a lot. It was go in the weight room and lift heavier weights.
Yeah.
That's how you get bigger.
I mean, it wasn't like the conveyor belt type of thing.
No.
Like guys touching their
not
toes.
not
Okay.
not that. So, but as the years have advanced, I was very fortunate. After my first pro year, I was sponsored by Adidas, and at that time, the IMG Sports Academy was also Adidas. So when my year ended, I didn't have anywhere to go, and they ended up sending me down to IMG. At that time, a gentleman named Mark Verstegen was running the strength and conditioning program.
He's like a guru.
He is
Exos.
big time. Yeah, he's worked with the German national team now and all. But back then, he was, he hadn't worked with a lot of soccer players. Worked with a lot of tennis players, baseball players, football players, and he allowed me into the gym and into his world, and we worked a lot together. And so it was fun for me to start learning Olympic lifting and all this stuff that made me even more explosive and increase my vertical and things that I needed. But we would sit and talk, during the workouts or even after workouts at lunch or whatever, of what I felt I needed as a goalkeeper, because again, it was new to him. And so I was fortunate enough to be in a world-class facility and learning that stuff and teaching Mark so we could train the proper way. But for me, I was always in the gym at the end of a season. I would take 2 weeks off, do absolutely nothing, no soccer, no working out, no nothing, just sit around, get away from it for a little bit. But then after 2 weeks, I was back in the gym because, again, for me, being a smaller goalkeeper, I knew the importance of it. The other way I always looked at it was if you did nothing for 6, 8, 10 weeks, however long we had, and then all of a sudden you get into preseason and you have 6 or 8 weeks to build everything back, if you're trying to work on your fitness as well as your goalkeeping, it's too much to try to do in that period. So for me,
to come in fit.
Yeah. So for me, my focus was if I can get to 75 to 85% fitness wise, that last 15, 20%, whatever I needed, it was more goalkeeper specific, and I could manage that during preseason. But if I didn't do anything all off season, and then I try to do everything in that short amount of time, and I've seen guys do it, they end up getting hurt because there's just too much on their plate to try to do in that time period.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Now, speaking of getting hurt, I want to bring this up because this is something that we get a lot of times questions from. I know Omar gets it all the time. I saw his arm, so he's very much somebody who's been adverse to some injuries when it comes to the hands and all that stuff. And how do you deal with that? Because I think all of us as goalkeepers, we've dealt with wrist injuries, we've dealt with broken bones, in our fingers and sprains and all that sort of stuff. I see a lot of young goalkeepers, they try to play through it, which I say to you, if you want to, for lack of a better term, prove your machismo, maybe do it somewhere else because you got to think long term right here. Is this going to benefit you to be able to finish this session right here?
Yeah.
So what's your feeling on that in regards to, there's a whole business built on finger protection. So,
yeah.
Any advice out there, or how do you feel goalkeepers should deal with this?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask about injuries because I try to play through everything.
Okay.
I even tried to play through a torn ACL, so I'm not probably the best.
Wow. Okay.
I'm probably dumb.
Okay.
I look back now and say, what were you thinking?
We can edit all of this out, guys.
So in that aspect, but maybe it goes back to Lucas's original question. Go back and tell myself something. Maybe I would have pulled myself off the field in certain situations.
Yeah.
But I've had 2 ACLs in my right knee. I've had a PCL in my left knee. Sometimes it's tough times. It's more of a mental thing, you know, because you're not doing what you love. You're not on the field. You're in the gym, and a lot of times you're in the gym by yourself, and maybe with one trainer, you know, and it's long hours. It's tedious work. You know, one of the things that I focused on was just every day trying to get whatever I was doing, get a little bit better, get a little bit stronger, get a little bit whatever. And it's like building blocks, you know, to try to obviously get back to the ultimate goal. But I always tell people when they do have specifically knee injuries is you will be able to handle the physical side. You will be able to push through things that you didn't know you could push through in the physical aspect of it. It will be the mental side that challenges you. You know, and because some days are great and some days you see progress and other days you don't. And so now all of a sudden you start having these questions in your head. Am I ever going to get back? Am I going to get back to normal? Am I going to get back on the field again? You know, all these questions go through your head. And you have to be mentally strong, but you also have to be able to prioritize and say, I'll deal with that down the road. Right now, my focus is whatever, working on my flexibility in my knee or working on the strength of my knee or now I'm running, and take one step at a time. Don't look at the big picture. You're not trying to go from A to Z in the alphabet. You've got to take each step at a time. And if you can do that, you'll get through it. But I won't lie. You know, I mean, I like I said, I played through a lot of, you know, especially fingers, knees, that sort of thing. And it is a mental battle.
Yeah. You know, you're talking about all these things that you say you wish you could, you know, say back in regards to your words were dumb in regards to these situations. Well, now you actually have been giving back. You've gone back to the grassroots game after a really ridiculously accomplished professional career. A lot of guys, what they choose to do is to focus on the pro game. A lot of older goalkeepers who were professionals, they don't feel as comfortable in the grassroots game, in the youth game. They don't feel like they relate to that game as much. So what gravitated you back to kind of ground zero and working with the kids?
Well, I've always done it through my entire career. I always coach youth kids, regardless of what level, you know, all the way up to college and that sort of thing. So I've always enjoyed it. It is about giving back because somebody did it for me years ago and started teaching me the position. But I also am a firm believer in, just like in my career, I started in the minor leagues, you know, and I believe in that. It's the same thing as a coach. You know, you have to start, you're building your profession. I'm working on my craft. I can't just go to the top. You know, I'm not ready for that. Yeah. And I know that and I understand that. So for me, it's, you know, let's start at the bottom. You know, let's give these kids what they need. Let's learn that level, and then we'll move up. It's just like my career from the USL to, you know, MLS and national team and all that. You got to take it step by step, you know, because when I do get to the top, you know, I want to stay there and I want to be the best I can be at the top, whether that's MLS or U.S. national team full time or anything like that. But you can't just jump there. You got to get the progression right.
Yeah. No, I think, you know, one thing that you brought up, and I hate to go off on a tangent here, but I kind of want to, because you're talking about you can't just move up and start at that top place. We see a lot of younger prospects that were very hyped up, kind of thrown into situations where they're not necessarily ready for. So do you feel like it's advantageous for a younger goalkeeper to start off in the lower leagues like the USL. Nowadays with the MLS 2 teams, you know, starting off over there and then gradually moving up to those first teams.
Oh, I agree 100% with that. You know, the best thing I ever did, and Eric Vaughter, you know, everybody knows that I speak very highly of him. Eric Vaughter was the person that told me, like, you're not going into the MLS. All right, you're not ready to go to the MLS. You need to go to the USL and you need to get your games. And at first I was, you know, annoyed with and upset about it because, you know, all you're thinking is I want to get to MLS, you know. But I thank him every day for it, because if I would have tried to jump to the MLS right away, straight out of Charlotte when I left early, I probably wouldn't have lasted that long. I probably would have been a year, 2 years, 3 years and gone, you know, because I just wasn't ready. And now I look back and I know that, you know, and that's the same information I give all young goalkeepers that come into the MLS or want to get into the MLS is, you know, go and work on your craft. Go to a place. It doesn't matter what league, whether it's, you know, USL Championship, whether it's USL 1, wherever, a reserve team, where you are going to play games. You know, I played, I think, close to probably 150 games before I became a full-time starting goalkeeper in the MLS. Okay, wow. So for me, I knew I was ready. You know, maybe some of the fans had no idea who I was or where I came from, but the coach knew what I had done, and I knew I was ready to make that next step. Yeah. And so I think that that's very important, again, in the progression. You know, one of the goalkeepers I used to look up to back in the day was Scott Garlick. And I remember having a conversation with Scott Garlick He was playing in the Carolina Dynamo, and he was going up and back to DC United at the time. Because back then you didn't have 3 guys on your roster. You had 2 goalkeepers, a straight 18-man roster. It was a much thinner roster than it is now. And one day after training, we went to the weight room, and I was in there working out, and Scotty came in, and we were chit-chatting about some things. And he asked me, he's like, Bushy, what's on your mind today? And I told him, I said, I'm just annoyed. I want to get to the MLS so bad. Like, how do I get to the MLS? And he kind of flipped it on me. And he said, Bushy, it's not about how quickly you get there. It's about how long you stay once you get there. And I never thought about it that way. And then I remember driving back to our apartment, after he left and after I was done working out. And I said, you know what? He's right. Because you don't want to be the guy who's there for a year or two and maybe plays a game or here or there and gets a free sweatshirt and a bag and whatnot. And then
I got some of that stuff from the New England Revolution.
There you go.
I still have it at home.
There you go. And then your career's done. I want to be the guy who stays around forever. Yeah. So that day I remember it, in Greensboro, North Carolina, and it just changed my thought process on it. Yeah. And then it was all about, okay, let me work on my craft. Whatever I needed to do to make sure if and when that day came, I was ready to go.
I think there are probably so many stories of people who had the same career path as you, in terms of starting at the USL and then kind of getting to the point where they felt they hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
And do you have any, pointers or anything? Because I'm sure, when you tell your story and we talk to any professional goalkeeper that's made it against the odds, they tell their story, and then it's like, I'm saying from a devil's advocate perspective, it's like, you can say that because you made it. Yeah, you can say this because, you're an all, you know what I'm saying? So if anybody out there is like at the ceiling of where they feel is the highest they can be and they haven't really gotten the opportunity, is there anything you can say that helps them kind of see it through and get to the next level?
I mean, for me, again, it goes back to attitude. I mean, I had the door shut in my face so many times. Like I said, from the time I was 15, I was always told I was never tall enough to make the next level, whatever that level was. I was just so determined, and as you said earlier, it only takes one coach to believe in you. It was Frank Kolnstein who brought me to UNC Charlotte. It was Greg Androulis, that brought me to Columbus Crew. Before that, it was Bob Lilly and Hershey. So the list is there, and there's always going to be one coach that is going to give you that opportunity. Yeah. You have to make sure you're ready when that opportunity comes, especially somebody in my situation, right? If I would have got to Columbus and not played the way I did from day one when I first got my opportunity, it probably would have been a quick, in and out situation. So I knew as soon as I had it, because I didn't have a long leash like some bigger guys, I knew I had to keep preparing, and when it came, I had to take it with both hands, and that's what I did. And so, again, for me, it was just about, I'm going to kick this door down no matter how many times I've got to kick the door. Yeah. Eventually, I'm going to get through that door.
But I feel like that's kind of what you've done in transitioning to your coaching career.
Yeah.
Because literally everything you just said, as you've kind of said it earlier, is that you needed to prove it to yourself that you're capable when that opportunity did come.
Yeah.
And I think that's even myself, when I first started my Instagram channel, YouTube channel, I was like, I want to be the national team coach. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then I was just like, I had to have a real conversation with myself. I was like, humble yourself before you're actually humbled.
Yes.
Because a lot of people out there are just going to take the risk, and they're going to be humbled by somebody versus putting in the work and then seeing it all the way through, seeing that hard work, with persistence. Yeah. And then eventually they get to that point where they're like, okay, it's been worth it. So absolutely. I'm hoping with your advice, there's people out there who are maybe, might call it a quits because they didn't make the college team or the high school team. The Michael Jordan story of not making the varsity roster. So it sends you, it's fight or flight. It sends you one way or it sends you the other way. So hopefully, with your advice, hopefully there's somebody out there who hears that and persists.
I want to talk about the college game real quick because there's kind of some thoughts in regards to what is the college game. Is the college game the youth game still? Is the college game the young adult professional game? Like what is the college game in your opinion? Do you still consider it part of the youth game? And what advice do you give to college coaches? Should they treat them more like youth players, more like professionals? Like what is the best route to go with when you're talking about 18, 19? And also a lot of times is when you're talking about 18, 19, 20, they're all on a different level of maturity.
Yeah.
Some of them act like they're 30. Yep. Some of them act like they're 14.
Yep.
So, what would you say?
I think it's somewhere in between those two now. Obviously, when I went to college, there wasn't a lot of pro environments. There wasn't a lot of the development in the academies and everything we have now. So that was just a natural next step. From club ball, when you graduated high school, you went to college, and played there. So for me, it was a perfect next step. I think there's less and less quality players going to colleges now. because of the academies and the DA systems and the reserve teams. But I still think there is a spot, and a very important spot, for these colleges. You're taking not just young players, but you're taking young people. And so part of that development also is turning them into good adults, good young adults. It has nothing to do with soccer.
Yeah.
It has to do with the person that's there. And the other part of it is not every player is going to make it and going to be a pro.
Yeah.
Some people just want to continue playing soccer and get an education, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You make a lot more money than I did in MLS, but that's a whole other story. But it is still a very good and valuable part of the development of an American soccer player, for sure.
Yeah. So you would say that for a college coach out there who's listening to this, because we do have a lot of college goalkeeper coaches that listen, is that focus more on the aspect of developing the human being right now than necessarily the goalkeeper, because in the long run that's going to be more beneficial to these young goalkeepers.
100%. It's there. Obviously, you're developing them as goalkeepers because that's a priority there. But the bigger picture is developing them into great young men or young women that can go out and whatever they do in this world, they become successful.
Yeah.
It's you're not going to hang your hat as a coach on how many goalkeepers I had do this. You're actually gonna hang your hat on what that person does in life.
Yeah.
To me, and again, as you get older, you realize that it's much more important to be a good person in life and be successful, no matter if you're a bricklayer, or a lawyer, or a goalkeeper.
I find that whenever I come across somebody and the first things that they mention to me, if they're a goalkeeper coach, and the first things they mention to me are who they've trained, I realize that's not a good goalkeeper coach, because they're not in it for the right reasons. They're in it for their own self-gratification and to let people know, look how wonderful I am, okay? Because, again, I tell the young staff assistants out here, because like I said, we're at the camp right now. There's staff assistants who are the college players right now who are helping out in the coaching responsibilities. I tell them, it's about them. It's about these kids out here. Remember that. It's not about us. So even if you don't would be bored with this session, look at where they're at right now.
Absolutely.
Maybe they're not where you're at physically, or technically, or tactically. And so we need to change the variables a little bit so that it works for them. So focus. Don't think about what I would want. Think about what they need.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing too is that we use goalkeeping, and for us at least, specifically goalkeeper coaches, as the vessel to, like you said, create these young men. My goalkeeper coach and I were very close, and you don't really understand it because you're going through day-to-day college classes and you're going through day-to-day finals and stuff like that. You're immature. But as you get older, you realize, wow, the reason why I made it through all those 4 years was because I had somebody who put their arm around me and said, hey, look, of course, like you said, priority is, becoming a better goalkeeper. But at the same time, too, we're spending so much time with them that you use goalkeeping to teach life lessons. And I remember I made not a bad mistake, but my first ever game in college where I started against Irvine. And I came out for a long throw-in, and I completely misjudged it. Guy headed it in, and we lost 3-0.
So what I do all the time.
Okay. Well, I went up to my goalkeeper coach and I say, hey, look, I really apologize. You gave me an opportunity and I messed up, and I'm upset that I let you down and the team down. And he's like, Omar, first off, I appreciate that. But second, we lost 3-0. There was a third goal, and we're going to see you continue to be our number one. So I want you to drop that bad attitude. I want you to actually, understand that you have a lot of skill. You have a lot to offer, and if you keep dwelling on this, you're going to lose your starting spot. So understand that, mature, and then figure out how you're going to get better. And I heard that I was only 17, and I heard that I was like, whoa, okay, that's a really positive way to put a spin on that, and that's what we have to do as coaches. I'm coaching now, so I have an understanding a little bit more on that side, and I just realized, like you said, Mike, earlier about empathy and understanding that they go through a lot more. And if you're, let's say for example, you just broke up with your girlfriend, and if you have never been through that before as a coach, or you see that, you're like, you know what? I'm going to take it easy on her today. I understand.
So you're saying a lot of goalkeeper coaches out there need to have more horrible relationships so they can understand.
I just think they need to have more or less the same experiences. That's why, when it comes to professional goalkeepers, unless you play professionally, I feel you have you have a little bit more of understanding of what your body needs on 2 days out from a game and things like that.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that, and let's talk about what is the differences. And I know this is a very base template, question that's asked a lot of times, by goalkeeper coaches. But, I assume that you have aspirations, you want to coach in the youth game, but you also probably want to work at the professional game as well too, and give that knowledge back, because you can bring something to the table that I can't to a professional because you've been in that environment. Yeah. Okay. So what are you bringing at the pro environment that you don't bring at the youth environment, and vice versa?
I think, at the youth level, you're probably bringing a lot more of the technical side and a bit more of the basics. As when you deal with the pros and even with the Olympic team and the younger pros and reserve teams and things like that, they're farther along in their technical side of the game. So, yeah, you're going to tweak things, but you're not doing as much of the development of like you would with the young kids, teaching them how to dive or teaching them how to catch a cross or teaching them how to, scoop an underhand ball or things like that. So that, for me, that's the biggest difference. When you get to the pro level, they can all make the saves. It's about the little things that make the difference: the communication, the starting positions, the angle play, the stuff that's not very black and white. It's a lot more gray areas. But the one thing I always like to say is, again, I've been very fortunate in my career. Been a number 1, a number 2, a number 3. Been traded. Been top of the mountain, bottom of the mountain. I've been in every situation, so I can put myself and I can relate to these kids. I can relate to when I did one of my first national team camps. I can relate to the 17-year-old kid who wanted to be with the under-20 national team, but we had him with the under-19s. And all the teams are training at the same facility, and he's bumming a little because he's like, I just played in a World Cup for the 17s, and I should be over there with the 20s, and I'm here with the 19s on an in-between year. And I let him go for a couple of days, and I pulled him aside, and we had a nice chat about it. And I told him, I said, look, about 100 years ago, I actually played in an under-17 World Cup. And he kind of looked at me and said, you did? I said, yeah. In 93, I went to Japan with the under-17s. I said, when we were done with that, I had to make the jump. I said, and back then there wasn't an 18s or a 19s. It was straight from 17s to 20s. You either made it or you didn't make it. So I knew what he was going through. I was very fortunate, but I'm able to put myself in these guys' shoes. When things are going well, how you feel and how confident you feel. When things aren't going well, how sometimes you keep mashing on the gas, and sometimes you actually need to take your foot off and breathe a little. Yeah. And again, because I've been there and I've done it, I feel like I'm able to put myself in their shoes and say, hey, we're going to do this with this situation, because I've been there and I've experienced it.
I'm going to cry. I think that was such a very well said answer, because I think that's what it is. I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to coaching. That's why if you've played and for me, I played in college and stuff like that, and I still see some things coaching in college, but the fact that I can have things that resonate with goalkeepers, like the number 2, I'll be like, look, man, all it takes is for the number 1 to get hurt. I'm not wishing ill on him, but I'm just saying,
it happens.
Like you said, that's what it is, though, too. How many people do we know in our life?
I'm glad you said I'm not wishing ill on Will. I was worried that you were going to wink or something like that.
My man, look, I'm about to put this guy through a somersault drill, and he might go down. But no, I think that's what it is, though. It's just, like you said, there's a lot of people in life who talk the talk, and then as soon as their opportunity comes, they can't put it together. No. And I think, like you said, you've been in every situation, so you can relate to it. And I think as coaches, that's the best way to relate to our goalkeepers is, hey, look, it took me a while to get this technique. It took me, 2 years to become the starter. So at least from there, they have okay, the coach understands where I'm coming from, and he's gonna, at least, cater to that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of injuries, and speaking of, I don't know the other segue because my brain's getting fried here. But what I was trying to do is I was trying to broach basically the fact that, Bushy, you obviously have seen a lot of different types of goalkeeping out there. You've seen a lot of different techniques. You've seen a lot of different elements. You hear a lot of goalkeeper coaches, or you have goalkeepers that come up to you and they say, oh, my coach told me to do it this way. My coach told me to do it this way. Or I tell my kids to do it this way, or whatever. First off, any goalkeeper coach who says to me, I tell my kids to do it this way, again, that's a red flag to me, because that means that they're not willing.
Is it a red flag? I don't know. I mentioned earlier today to somebody, and they were like, "Well, you want to take credit for your craft, right?" Yeah. I even told them too. Sometimes I love serving the ball a certain way. Yeah. And sometimes it's not an ego thing, but I just want to show people that I can serve the ball a certain way. It's that's not really much of an ego. It's more of that you respect your craft and you're putting your work into it.
But Omar, I think that's little different than what I was saying. So what I'm saying is, if somebody comes up to me and I'm saying, this is how this session went or whatever, and they go, oh, well, I tell my goalkeepers to do
Oh,
it this
okay.
way.
If you said it like that, I thought you meant like, if someone asked you, hey, Mike, how do you do it with your kids?
Oh, no.
Okay,
no,
I said the context.
Yeah,
I
you
was
got
like,
it
okay.
completely out of context.
We good, dude?
Yeah, we're absolutely good. What is this becoming like the Undisputed now?
We're going to have to take a
First
timeout
take?
here because they're
Stephen A. Smith
arguing
style?
now.
I mean, no. That would be hilarious if this just became like just like a talking heads like debate show, and John's just like, I think you're both wrong. So, no, I think the thing is that goalkeeper coaches, and I think, you can agree with it. You always talk meat and potatoes, and what meat and potatoes means, to Bushy is, this is the basics of goalkeeping, the foundation of goalkeeping. But you've worked with so many different types of goalkeeper coaches out there, especially at the pro level, from all various, walks of life, different ethnic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds. And so what's your advice to goalkeepers out there who have been resistant to, let's say, quote unquote, modern goalkeeping, or, the modern game about playing short distribution, or look at the old school game and go, oh, there's nothing I can learn from that. You talk about, Eric Vauder, Eric Vauder's been around for
He's been
quite a
doing
while.
it for over 40 years.
Over 40 years, and some young hotshot on Instagram will say like, oh, well, actually you really got to do it like this with candy canes flying through.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, to build off exactly what you're saying, though, you've been through so many, like, realistically, you kind of take a step back from your career. You've been through so many transitional periods in goalkeeping. Yeah. Whether it was you're a drop kicker, right?
I hit drop kicks all the time. Yeah.
I used to hit like 70-yard balls. I'm a Galaxy fan, so I remember those days. I see you hit the ball like 70 yards. I'm like, oh my God, this guy. And then you start seeing that everyone starts switching to the side volley. But I don't think you did. You stuck with it.
I picked it up a little bit towards the end of my career. I didn't really call it a sidewinder. I called it more of a quarter winder because I couldn't really get my leg up that high. But it's, the biggest thing is the game's going to continue to change. All right. For me, I like being around a lot of different coaches because you pick up different things from, each one of them. It's not one way or the highway. It's not this is how you do it or you're not going to become a good goalkeeper. Again, every goalkeeper's different. You start with the foundation. It's like building a house. You start with the foundation, but then once you get into building a house, some are 2 levels, some are 4 levels, some have 5 bedrooms, some have, some are studios. It's the same thing with goalkeeper house. There's going to be a lot of similarities, but there's going to be a lot of differences, right? I couldn't play like Casey Keller. Casey Keller can't play like Jon Busch did, and so, Casey's probably the best I've ever seen being in national team camp when we could not score on him in a 4v4 game. Wow. Now, if you ask Casey Keller to go through a footwork ladder, he would have tripped over every rung, and he'd tell you that, right? But he was the best, hands down, I have ever worked with. So things like that, you need to learn from every different goalkeeper coach. You need to try things. Again, it's not always going to fit into your game, but you have to be open-minded. You have to be willing to try different things, see if it fits in. If it does, keep it. If it doesn't, that's okay. You've tried it. But if you have this attitude, whether you're a coach or a player, that this is the way I'm trained or this is what I do and there's nothing else out there, okay, you are going to shortchange yourself and you're not going to reach your full potential because there's pieces of the puzzle that are out there that you might not be willing to have an open mind to.
Yeah.
I think one second. I think one thing too, the reason why I've held back on taking ideas from other people is it's an ego thing where like I know everything and I'm gonna do it my way because I don't want anybody to take credit for my success in that way. But you've taught me to stay away from that. Trust me, he's been a good person in my ear to that. But it's so true.
It took 6 hours driving from Arizona to California.
But it's so true. Then I remember one time one of our old friends, Sharif, is a coach. Yeah. He said that when you take from one coach, it's plagiarism. When you take from multiple coaches, it's research. So I started thinking about that, and I was like, no, it's so true. You can take something off of everybody, and everybody can offer you something that, whether it's how you communicate with your team, how you like literally. I talk very fast, so sometimes I'm going I'm going very scatterbrained, and then I realize
people slow down the podcast when they listen to
it. But then I realized I'm like, I didn't actually introduce myself. I didn't introduce the topic. I didn't introduce what I want. And again, we trained with Jon this morning, and I told you I was looking for little things that he did as a coach. And one thing he did was like he made sure that every single thing was introed by let me tell you the context of what I'm looking for, so that he didn't have to stop it. We had our rhythm going through it. For me, I probably would have done it, and then middle of their rhythm, I would have said, hey guys, let me tell you. By the way, I forgot. Let me tell you what I want you to work on. So again, that's the little things that you pick off from other coaches.
But Omar, also look at that. Just how long has Bushy been coaching? How long have you been coaching? So I mean, not saying you're a young coach. I mean, obviously you've been coaching for a good amount of time.
I am though, but
but in respect, Bushy's been doing these sessions You know, I mean, well,
A
he's
long
probably done
time.
a million.
A long time. Let's just leave it at that.
We'll just leave it at a
All
long
right.
time. We'll leave it a long time. Okay, we're running late here, guys. I know. Bushy, thanks for going along with us, man.
Yeah, no.
He told me.
It's so funny. He said he's like, I talk a lot. We're
I
gonna
talk
go for
a lot.
while.
I told you it was going to go for a while.
I mean, look,
so.
we rarely have an episode go under an hour. If it
Yeah.
goes under an hour, chances are
It was a boring. It was a
reason.
boring
It was a
conversation that we
boring
just kind of go.
conversation.
We look at each other
We're
like,
like,
all right.
well, we've had people on before in the past, and let's just say that you've never heard those episodes. But before you go, I want to talk about the social media aspect of goalkeeping, because it's become a really hot topic. Some people look at the negative, stigma attached to social media and Instagram, and then some people look at the positive aspects. You know, we ourselves as pundits, as influencers, and all that, we're trying to bring a positive spin to social media.
Mm-hmm.
We want it to be real educational content,
Absolutely.
but entertaining at the same time. The problem is we see a lot out there is we see a lot of people who just throw fluff up there, don't give it any context whatsoever for why it's up there, and then kids just try to go out and emulate that, not understanding the steps that you have to break this down in order for that final picture to be painted. So what advice do you give to coaches out there who are trying to use, Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff, coming from a meat and potatoes guy like yourself, you know?
Look, I've got both of them, and, I didn't really have them as a player. I didn't want to have them as a player, but, owning my own glove company now, I know that that's the world we live in. We have to have it. I very rarely put a lot of my training stuff on there. I'm not that type of guy. Occasionally I'll put something on there if somebody's recorded or somebody's taking a picture or whatever. But I'm not hiding anything. It's just that's not my focus. Again, I'm focused on just doing my business there and making the goalkeepers better. But I guess the biggest thing is think about what you're putting on there, and think about the reasons why you're putting it on there. Why do you want to put that video, or why do you want to say what you want to say, because especially in this world and today, so many people are on social media, and it gives people an instant voice, that might not have a voice any other way, and so, just think about what you're saying, or what video you're putting out, or how can these young kids see it, male or female. Again, I very rarely go off on topics other than gloves or training or that sort of thing, and that's just me. But just take a second and think. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we've had this conversation ourselves before, and we pride ourselves. I mean, when we talk about it, it's like if we wanted 3 million followers, we could very easily do that.
Yeah.
But we would be taking away the whole reason that we got into education in the first place, and that's to convey information in a way that somebody is going to be able to benefit from. But at the same time, we want to keep it entertaining, obviously, because it is entertainment, So it's a good thing Bushy's not boring, otherwise no one would listen to this.
Exactly.
But at the same time, if the substance isn't there, people are going to figure it out real quickly.
Exactly.
And yes, you might get the initial, views or whatever, but the people like yourself. They're not going to respect you, and in the long run, it's going to hurt your career as a coach.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you see a lot of people too on whether it's TV shows or social media or whatever it is. They're hot for a few minutes, but if you don't offer something, you don't offer in terms of like talent or anything like that, people will figure it out quick. Well, people are smart. Yeah. Sure, people on social media, they'll show you some love and all that stuff. But for me, at least, I had to make the conscious decision when I started doing my videos. Hey, look. At the end of the day, if I can create something that allows young kids to see it and they love it, great. But at the same time, too, I'm a coach and I'm responsible for like producing content that's not only going to help coaches, but help like actual kids not see the fluff in it all.
Yeah.
They can be like, you know what? Okay, this is actually going to help me. So it takes time. So anybody who's doing content, it takes time, but the substance always wins in the end, like Mike said. And
yeah, I mean, it takes Omar over 17 hours to put one post up. No, I'm kidding.
No, but it does though. And I when I was younger, I wasn't the best writer, but over time, there was one time we were actually driving. I've said it before on the podcast. We were driving to Arizona, and I was writing this post about Manuel Neuer, and we're just talking about just kind of, is his career over? Is he going to come back from his ankle injuries? And I spent probably like 45 minutes just in the car trying to articulate it a certain way where I had empathy for people who had gone through injuries. I had empathy for people who are a little bit older who are trying to revive their careers.
Yeah.
And in that sense, so I felt like really taking the time makes a lot of, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people who post this type of content don't do enough in terms of understanding the context and who the audience is.
Yeah, no. And by the way, I think, you got to understand, why, where your strengths lie and stuff like that. And, and that's one of the reasons why, like here at Camp Shutout, like Stan saw me, run a session. He said, you know what, you're better off just doing the podcast. Just go and do the podcast and you're going to be much better off. Honestly, Bushy, thanks for taking all the time with us.
That was awesome.
If any of the kids out there, one thing about you is you're so humble. For somebody who's accomplished so much, the way he introduced himself at the camp, for instance, was, hey guys, my name's Jon Busch. People call me Bushy. Sometimes I train goalkeepers. And I think that's the attitude you have to have regardless of what you've done, because then it's not about you, it's about the kids out there.
But one thing I'm going to say, though, is that when you come across somebody like that, I think I heard on a podcast, is like the quiet person is usually the smartest person in the room. And sometimes I feel like, no, but I felt like.
I don't know that's not the truth in this situation.
No, but I felt like you.
Don't worry, next week's episode will just be bashing you.
Yeah.
No, I feel like you let your coaching do the talking.
Yeah.
And as I think it was Stan who said it, it was like everything's in here. Yeah. When it comes to coaching too, everybody has something different up there.
Yeah.
So when you introduce yourself like that, that's one way. And then I saw you actually coach, and I was like, oh my God. That was the same guy, because you actually, you know what I'm saying? It brings the best out of us because we love it so much, and we actually can, coach. That's why coaching is fun, because you become a different person, and like whenever you're passionate about something, it's just like an added level of confidence.
Well, you even see with some of the kids out here at camp, and I know we're still going long, guys, but there's kids out here who literally they're like mice up there, completely scared to death off the field. You saw them in goal, you wouldn't even think that's the same kid.
Yeah.
Because they're just confident out there, and it's something that they're passionate about, and then they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so my advice is to any kid out there who's having issues off the field, maybe socially, or uncomfortable talking to people in social situations, like act like you're in goal. If you're confident in goal, just bring that same confidence off the field, because it's going to make just a huge difference. You're talking about making life lessons for kids out there.
Yeah. It's tough when I tell women, like, whoa, so what do you do? We're at a bar, but like, look, it's difficult to tell you, but I'm a goalkeeper coach, influencer. I'm on social media. Like, okay.
Oh, try telling people, what do you do for a living? I go, well, I'm a comedian, a writer, an actor, and then I also train goalkeepers, and then we have a podcast and stuff like that. They're like, oh, you're unemployed. You're an unemployed person who's coming up with reasons why you're unemployed. That sounds great. Bushy, if any kids out there, any coaches out there, they want to reach out to you, you're ridiculously accessible.
Yes, I am.
Which is really, really nice of you. I mean, just you're always liking stuff, which is really cool. For somebody who says they're not social media apt, you spend a decent amount of time on it.
Yeah, I do, unfortunately. You're right. I started spending more time since I've retired. But they can find me at HPG_GK.
Okay. HPG_GK on all social media platforms?
On all social media
platforms. What does that stand for?
High Performance Goalkeeping.
That's
my glove company.
There we go.
There you go. There's where the plug came, right at the end.
There we go.
Hey, guys, that's all the time on Inside the 18. Contact at InsideThe18Media.com if you got questions for us, or if you got guest suggestions, people you'd like to see, or topics you'd like us to cover on the show. All right, well, let's get back out to the field, guys. We're out.
Let's do it.
Thanks.
Bye.